Cool. Well, excited to be here with you guys today. My name is Austie Montgomery. I'm a Senior Director of Brand Partnerships at a company called ClutchPoints. If you're not familiar, we are actually a minority-owned sports and entertainment media company. So I'm definitely excited to be here with our amazing 4 panelists today. So I'll kind of just kick things over to them to do a quick introduction as well.
First? Okay. Hey guys, I'm Ali Giordano. I am responsible for global sponsorships at MasterCard. Largely look after an international portfolio of sports and entertainment and our activation strategy across the world. So I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks to Brand Innovators for having me.
Paul Pettas, VP of Brand and Communications for Sodexo Live. For those not familiar, we are a hospitality partner to stadiums, to arenas, convention centers. We do more than just food. It's about the experience for us. We're in 200 plus venues around North America, and I think for the next half hour, I'm probably going to zig while others zag in terms of brand awareness. If we're doing our jobs right, you don't really know who we are, and we're activating our great partners like the Saints to really let their brand shine and be the ones who help provide a great fan experience. So with that, I'll pass the mic to Rich. Thanks for having us.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Rich Barbier, VP Consumer Insights and Analytics over at the hometown New Orleans Saints. Really, it's all pieces data, like thinking about how we can leverage a lot of what consumers are sharing with us to enhance that fan experience across the board for both the Saints and the Pelicans. Super excited to welcome you all.
Hi, I'm Damon Mercadante, VP of Growth at Sleeper. Those who may not know about Sleeper, we're one of the fastest fantasy sports apps over the last couple of years. We are now the #2 fantasy football app in the market with about 8 million users, primarily the 18 to 24 crowd. 77% of our users are under 35.
That's great.
Cool. So we're here to talk about brand awareness with sports fans. I think the term sports fan is very broad. So I would just love to hear from you guys what your definition of a sports fan is.
For us, I think we look at both hardcore fans and the casual audience. So we try to personalize our experience. Leans a little bit more at the mobile-first, younger audience. But I think everybody loves live entertainment, emotions, excitement. It's a way to connect with your friends.
Yeah, I mean, on our side, it's really starting to evolve, right? Like traditionally, particularly in a city like New Orleans, it's been a huge focus on the local fan, particularly those individuals who come to the Dome, come to the Smoothie King Center, and really attend our games live. But I think we've really had to adapt. In the NBA, 99% of our fans will never actually attend a game. In the NFL, that number's around 95%. So it's really starting to adapt on merchandise, on social media, on our app presence, to really think about meeting our fans where they want to be met.
No, it's going to hand you my mic.
Yeah, no, I think that the term sports fan for us from an F&B hospitality perspective, it really, sports fan doesn't necessarily need to be someone who's there for the game. It's someone who's there for the food, we hope, someone who's there for the experience, right? I think when we look at how we help, we are the partner to the Saints. We obviously do a lot with F1 and different tennis events, all major sports. We were talking on the pre-call with Ali around how brands like MasterCard kind of show up at these events, and the fact that I think there's this stigma that when it comes to the sports experience and really the in-person event, when Rich said about 99% of fans of the Saints will never, or the Pelicans will never go to a game, that hurts me to the core because our business is around the live experience. So at the end of the day, the folks that are joining you in person, the folks that are there for the event, there's this stigma that they just want to spend as little as possible on the food, and there's been this whole shift the last few years around value items, and certainly it's crucial to have it affordable for a family of 4 to go to a game and have it be, not an arm and a leg to get some food and drink. But at the same time, there's a lot of fans and guests there who are in that city or that stadium for maybe one time, maybe just for a weekend, and they want to splurge, and they do want to be sold to, and they do want to have the ability to spend on lobster and spend on caviar. And so I think having that tiering where on both ends of the spectrum, you can meet people where they want to be, and for having brands activate and hosting VIPs and clients, like it's really about crossing all ends of the spectrum. So the term sports fan is foodies to us. It's brand partners, it's client partners, it's more than just the sport. And I think that the more that we can just be mindful of the different tiers that are out there, the more successful we can be. So yeah,
I think that's a great point, Paul. From a sports fan perspective, we do take a broad look as well. We're in the business of passions. It's at the core of our marketing strategy and the ethos of our brand, which is priceless. And so for us, it's really being able to hit all levels of that fan. I'll use golf as an example. You could be an avid golfer, you play, you might go to a major if you can get a ticket, or you might go to your local tournament, or you just golf, right? And you're a fan of that passion, you're a fan of golf. But you also might be someone who only attends to that local tournament in your town. But you also may be someone who watches at home or only carries your mobile phone, and you follow your favorite player in social, and all of those different audiences are fans to us. And so again, where we can meet them is where it matters. And so for us, it's about delivering experiences to different audiences wherever they are.
Thank you. So, Rich, those are some crazy stats also. So the word experience came up for at least 3 of you. So, sports fans are increasingly looking for experiences that feel more personalized and authentic. What are you doing to evolve the fan experience while also increasing brand awareness?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. All right, I'll go. Go ahead, Rich. Yeah, okay. So we just, as an example, again, we work across a number of different passion sports properties all around the world. We are much more of an experiential marketer. We've moved away from advertising per se, and we found that that's really what people are looking for. All of our economics research out of MasterCard shows that over 60% of people are looking for that experience, that personalized experience that's really getting them closer to their passion. And most recently in Abu Dhabi, we had just kicked off our McLaren partnership, and we were able to create a fan experience that, again, not many people get to go to an F1 race, whether it's the price point or where there's just access to assets in general. And so what we were able to do is turn what could have been like just a traditional billboard into an experiential hub, allowing the fans that weren't actually going to the race to engage in a fan zone and really connect, whether it's meeting players or getting McLaren content. So that's sort of where we've been moving towards, is really trying to connect and create once-in-a-lifetime experiences. In golf, it's getting them inside the ropes. Really just understanding what people are looking for and always pushing our properties and partners, working with them to try to deliver that.
Nice. I think on our side, and it's great to see my team here in the building, we've just gotten super, super aggressive about data. Not to be too geeky about it, but with the great folks that I have on the team, we go into every single detail. We look at surveys with incredible levels of analysis. We look at social media trends. We look at merchandise trends. We go across the board to really understand and kind of form a two-way communication with the consumer and really take that feedback. The resources are really finite when you think about an NFL or an NBA team. And so we've got to be super intentional about where we choose to invest. But the consumer is willing to share with you, like, hey, the music, you might want to shift towards a genre a little bit more. On the merchandise side, we're not seeing enough hoodies, and maybe jerseys aren't as popular, so make some shifts here and there. But I think as you start to assess the data piece of it, you get a better feel of how to really enhance on the margins. And then when you make a big play, like what we've done with the Superdome, you start to feel more confident in terms of how you've gone about it.
Yeah, I think on the data side for us, like especially when we look at, we recently did a whole survey of 2,000 sports fans around the U.S. and, I think it was 58% of fans, when we look at like the hospitality piece, really want to see local brands in that building. And so for us, the more that we can activate local, the more that we can source product, not from the massive national suppliers, the more that we can break into, for example, this weekend, we're going to have 50,000 orders of baguettes for the Po' Boys in the Superdome from Leidenheimer's, a 5th generation, 1896 founded bakery right here in New Orleans. And we're sourcing all of that from right here, not from some random national conglomerate, right? And so I think the more that we can kind of meet those fans where they want local, and they also want to have the ability to have, a different experience. Like how can we help teams like the Saints and the Pelicans, activate their brand partners in different ways, where it's not just slapping your logo onto a suite. It's can we make a bespoke speakeasy somewhere in the stadium? I know that I forget the name of it now, the new one at the Superdome, but we've had a few new bars over the years where it's different spaces for folks to have, you know, a different experience. And you look at F1, for example, you know, how do we activate different spaces and really bring to life that local market and bring to life these brands in different ways. The last thing I'll add on the experience piece too, we've done a lot more recently with usually a company like ours, certainly compared to my colleagues here in terms of doing like celebrity activations and partnerships. It's new for us this year, but just this weekend we did our first kind of chief labor officer activation with a former player, Marshall Faulk, you know, long lost son in New Orleans, great pride in New Orleans, was born and raised here, played Hall of Fame career for the Colts and the Rams, and we had him on Radio Row yesterday for 3 hours. And he's a passionate foodie, and it's real. And we were able to activate him to be a great voice for the work that we do. And certainly being a B2B brand, you wouldn't think that we would be breaking into consumer outlets, but for a week like this, we really are. And at the end of the day, even though our team owners, our team partners are B2B, they're still reading consumer-facing outlets. They're still interacting on social media. So I think there's this stigma that if you're B2B, you just need to be in the trades. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, and I think the more that you can have, you know, celebrity partnerships and meeting people where they are in terms of social media as well, not just in stadium, I think the more success you can have. So, yeah, I'll shut up now.
Cool. Well, I will back you up. I enjoy the local food when I go to various stadiums. I think it's great, and a big differentiator in the last few years. At Sleeper, our mission is to connect people through sports. So no politics, just love for the game. Love in community among friends. Beyond football, what we're looking at are, you know, basketball, baseball, soccer. But if you can imagine from the experience and personalization, even the NFL, right? The Super Bowl is broadcast globally. You know, can you have people in different countries communicating in different languages in sports slang, but it translates into your core language? So it could be English, Portuguese if you're in Brazil, Spanish if you're in Spain, Chinese if you're in China. So what we're trying to do is personalize that experience from a true day-to-day game experience. What we are looking for next year is how do we integrate with partners, sort of bring value to both, whether it's, you know, people want to order food at home while they're interacting with the game, whether at the stadium, we should probably look at how do we actually integrate with your platforms in stadium, because a lot of our users are actually on their phone in our platform, but we can connect them to your devices system seamlessly. So I think personalization is really about the experience, and experience is about friends and community.
And I'll just add to it, I think it kind of hit me when, thanks so much. I mean, I think more and more just now knowing the kind of, when you brought the politics piece, I mean, from a media standpoint, right, I think people have come to trust brands as much as they do traditional news outlets per se. And it's kind of, you know, dystopian to think of it that way, but it's true, I think, in that people who, if you trust a brand, the content that brand is putting out, you become really attached to it emotionally, and it really, I think, helps shift your worldview. So I think the more that brands can kind of, you know, just realize that and have a more authentic connection with their stakeholders, the better off they'll be. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Love that. So I know you kind of already tapped into this a little bit, Paul, but how do you guys see the relationship between sports fans, brands, and talent evolving? And if you want to speak to anything you're kind of currently doing in the talent space as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Marshall Faulk thing is a great example. But, you know, besides Marshall, we did in the last 2 years, for example, Indianapolis Colts, we found out 2 of their players who were on Hard Knocks. There was a whole scene about them talking about their love for making their own chicken wings and their love for cooking during training camp. So we reached out to our partners at the Colts, and that year we had 2 dedicated items. It was Grover Stewart's chicken wings and Darius Leonard's smash burger, and we donated whatever was 10% of all proceeds all season long to their foundations in Indianapolis. So I think there's a real affinity for kind of player-inspired connections, and I think it speaks to, just again, to go back to the authenticity piece, we're not just going to do celebrity for the sake of celebrity. It's got to have a player connection. It's got to have a connection to our brand. I'm not just going to throw money at some random celebrity to have a connection to our brand if it makes no sense. So I think that people definitely, it helps break through the noise, but I think consumers also see when it's just fake, when it's really just being done for clicks. So I think you got to kind of stay true to who you are. I'm wearing a freaking hot dog hat on a stage right now. I'm trying to be true to the brand, for the brand. And I think realistically, you have to kind of know who you are and where you play, and and do what you can do. I think from an experience point too, just the last one I'll make for now is that when you look at the Super Bowl, it's a global stage, it's a global platform, right? But it has to show up every single day in the smallest basketball game, in the smallest whatever, tennis, hockey, whatever it is, it has to show up every single week, every single touch point you have. So when it comes time for the Super Bowl, it's just natural, right? So it can't just be a gimmick for the sake of a gimmick. So great question.
Sorry, I don't want to lead too much here, but one of the things we've been looking at is you have pros and you have Joes, right? And if you think about social, everybody thinks they're a pro. On Monday after a football game, they would have done something differently. If it was a basketball, they could have made that shot. So we're investing in some scenarios where we're meeting people locally on their field with pros and Joes, and among their friends, like who's the winner. And so I think it's more of just that inspiration of this Joe is a star, but it's also this sort of nuance of, there's a big difference between pros and Joes.
Look, I agree. I won't belabor the point, but I'm very much aligned with Paul on this one. Authenticity really is the key. See Nicole in the audience. I think about my time with the WNBA. I think about what Nike meant to the league at the time in terms of, just to put a story out there, before the W saw the success we saw this past year, the WNBA was down to really think about what do our athletes need? And Nike delivered, right? Like they came out, they reimagined uniforms for the WNBA. It was the first time that we actually set uniforms that were designed for a woman's body, right? They came down and they literally wove into the fabric stories related to what each franchise went to in order to be where they were season 20, right? So at that point, when you see the lift that the WNBA took off, Nike was organically positioned to really see that lift alongside the league. And that's really what you were talking about there, Paul. You got to be genuine about it. You got to be all in. And you've got to take all the steps as the journey goes on.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think also from an athlete perspective, what we try to do is align with their interests. So one, make sure that our values as a brand are matching their values as human beings, but also interests, right? So we have a big stake in women's sport and also women in technology. And one of the things that we do is create STEM programs all around the world, for example. And we try to pair that with sport. So as an example, in the case of rugby, we've been able to create a rugby curriculum so that you can learn how to be in the science of the game, whether it's learning about how to manage a pitch, whether it's learning how you could be a manufacturer, things like that. So it's not just being an athlete, but kind of everything that surrounds it from a STEM perspective. And so then it's about aligning with the athletes within that passion that really kind of connect with that. So we happen to work with Portia Woodman. She's a mom. She was really interested in partnering with us. We also would work with World Rugby and find other athletes. We also work with Dan Carter, who was a parent and was really interested in getting involved. And so we'll pair a STEM training, and then we'll surprise the kids by bringing the athletes there. And it makes a lot of sense both for them. The girls are super excited and they can kind of see her, right? And they can see Portia and wow, I can be that one day. But at the same time, they're learning it's not just about being an athlete, it's about being a leader, and there's other ways to perform in the sport. So we've been able to really leverage athletes in sort of these, I'd say, authentic to our brand way in what we're trying to accomplish.
We're doing work with the next 3 Rugby World Cups, actually, so we should talk about ways we can kind of integrate there. Yes, there you go. In Langley, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. I did not know that, so that's very cool. Question for you guys regarding community. How do you think you can create a sense of community among fans through your brand's engagement efforts? I
mean, it's NOLA versus everybody, right? I think what I've seen, particularly here in the city of New Orleans, are a number of athletes, a number of individuals that are really passionate about being bigger than the game. I think what's been unique about this city, when I think about, like, as you guys walk around the city, I almost guarantee you're going to see Camp Jordan somewhere. He's in and of the community. He's like a Pro Bowler on the field, but off the field, he's one of us, right? I think about our owner, Mrs. Benson. She's actively involved. Hospitals, schools, like she's out there. You really have to be authentic in a city like New Orleans to really demonstrate the fact that everything you say on the field you represent off the field. And I think that's what's allowed us, even though we've seen, good seasons, bad seasons on the field or on the court, this city's really stuck behind both of the franchises because they know that each of those individuals on the court, in the front office, in the back office, like they represent their city. And it's truly, like I said, NOLA versus everybody.
I'm not going to follow that one.
No, I think from our standpoint, it's how do we be to our partners and our stakeholders more than just the food people, right? We're doing hospitality, premium hospitality sales for the next 3 Rugby World Cups. We're breaking out of just being kind of a one-trick pony for our partners. I think doing more ticket sales. How do we do more? Have more stickiness in terms of thinking through the actual physical build-outs of the spaces. We have a whole team dedicated to thinking through the whole fan flow, and obviously I keep coming back to the Superdome, of course. It's the theme this week, but was it $560 million renovation project over the last few years to modernize the dome and really try to be a strategic partner with the team and the local authority stakeholders with how do we actually make this a place, a real gathering place for not just Saints fans but those who come from out of town, and how do we make this a true home field advantage and try to be true partners in more than just the F&B, right? I look at a city like Seattle, for example. I don't know if there's any Mariners fans out there. Haven't done much winning on the field in the last 20 plus years, but as from a fan standpoint, as we like to say, no matter what happens on the field, the off the field experience should still be great. And a team like the Mariners, they've really bought into putting the money, putting the energy into investing in that off field experience. Because at the end of the day, you sort of get fans through the door, and the stadium and the in person event should still be a beating heart of the city it's in. So a great partner in the Seattle Mariners in terms of really thinking through how to keep getting fans there, always being down to try new things, try gimmicks. We did a whole activation with them this year where we activated a local sausage partner by doing hot dogs from heaven. I don't know if anybody saw these videos last year. They went viral throughout the season. Every 6th inning, we would truly, from the top of the roof of the stadium, drop hot dogs in mini parachutes down to lucky fans, and they would blast Belinda Carlisle, Heaven is a Place on Earth. And it was like a whole thing. The New York Times covered it. It was truly the silliest gimmick, but it broke through because people it was fun. It was different. And again, it was on brand. It was authentic. So not saying that the Saints replicate that per se, but find your own thing, of course. And maybe if there's hot dogs and parachutes at Smoothie King Center next season, why not? So, yeah.
You get that from beignets?
There we go. Beignets from heaven. Yes.
Beignets from heaven.
You heard it here first. Yeah. Yeah.
I think from a community perspective, what I've been really proud of our company doing, and something that we try to, one is, obviously engage with the community, that's sports fan, whether it's the women's sports community, whether it's the baseball community, football, et cetera. But we also use our investments and opportunities to engage community in a different way. So we've been partners with Major League Baseball for many years, and together we have been partners with Stand Up to Cancer for many years. And if you guys have ever watched the All-Star game and then either game 2 or 4 of the World Series, you'll see kind of the culmination of what we do with baseball throughout the season, or at least for the second half of the season. And one of the things that we do to try to bring the baseball community together, both in stadium and around the world that's viewing, is a placard moment. So we run a program throughout the summer leading into the World Series where when you spend in certain categories, we donate to Stand Up to Cancer. And with that money, they are able to then do amazing work and are able to kind of move progress much more quickly than the traditional research that's done. And then at the World Series, we really create a community within that stadium where every team, every player, every umpire, every human being, even in the broadcast booth, is silent and is standing up for someone that has been impacted by cancer. And it's unbelievable. And we actually took it even further this year, again, to extend that community so people are caring and paying attention, to doing a show, a drone show in New York City, again, for a placard moment at that same time. So again, it's using the fandom in a different way and bringing attention to something super important to us and the world.
It really is such a cool moment when you guys do that. Like, I'm always blown away by just the true quietness of it. When we were at the All-Star
It's like
game.
a pin can drop.
Yeah, I finally had the first time to do it in person in Seattle last year for the All-Star game. And it was such a surreal moment. It was quiet for however long it was. It was very properly done. And yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Not sure how we're doing on time. I think we probably have one more question. So what advice would you give to companies that are trying to create deeper, longer lasting relationships with sports fans in what is a pretty crowded marketplace?
So we're focused on, at some levels, influencers and younger demographics. One of the things we've done is partner with, I'm not sure if you know of Destroying, he's the #1 YouTube football creator. And what we found is we created a series called Kicking It with D. And ultimately, we're trying to connect with users where they are. A lot of younger demographics are on video, on social media, but how can we connect with them there, bring them into our world? What is unique about us is, and D in particular, is that he's very engaged with the younger athletes. For example, the Heisman Trophy winners were all on Kicking It with D. And so as they migrate into the NFL, we're building that relationship with those younger players as they become superstars in the NFL. So we're starting at this earlier generation and expanding up through there.
I mean, I take it back to marketing 101 a little bit in the sense of identify who your consumer is and be super willing to grow with that consumer. Going back to the data piece, I feel like we've identified both on the Saints and Pelicans side a subset of consumers that we find a lot of value in. And for us, it's a matter of constantly going back to that consumer and asking the question, how are we doing? And in a city like New Orleans, the great part is they'll be super honest. They'll tell us where we're missing. And we have a willingness. I see Nancy in the audience from a marketing perspective. Like, we're actually willing to listen to that feedback and constantly hit, all right, reset, adapt, right? Once you've established, all right, this is who we want to win with, at that point, things get a little bit easier because you know, are we winning? Are we not winning? And let's be willing to adapt.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, it's, how can we better tap, you mentioned the marketing piece before, and, how can we, better tap into the influencers that are in these cities where we operate. Shout out again to Nancy. I mean, for example, we had a great, this past season to kick off our Saints season, we had a whole media football and food combine where we actually welcomed a handful of local influencers, journalists, and opposed to doing just the same old tasting that we do with our teams, our venues all around the league, we actually had all of the local reporters and influencers run through drills on the field and obviously capture content doing all of that. And I think it was just a great example of not just doing the same old, thinking about ways that you can still connect and that you can still excite the local stakeholders, the local influencers. But at the end of the day, it has to be different. It has to always feel fresh, right? Even, for example, this past fall, we hosted 12 of the final 18 Taylor Swift shows. And at each of the venues, we had New Orleans and Vancouver, Miami, and Indy. We had a handful of specially themed items, specially named just for Taylor Swift, odes to the lyrics or to the songs. And obviously, if you can find a way to tap into Taylor Nation and the army of Swifties on social media, do that. Because the social impact, the number of social impressions that we saw, people talking about, hey, these guys get it. And there were tweets out there like, when I went to the show in Tampa last year, all they had was sad hot dogs and nachos, but I came to New Orleans and I had fearless fries. And we had, special cocktails, an ode to Love Spiral. And, I think just those little touches that really at the end of the day don't really mean much from a business. Like, it's not much of an investment to do it. It just takes some courage and some creativity. It doesn't cost anything to be creative, right? So I think the more that you can kind of do that, and you really find a way to connect not only with consumers but with your business partners as well. So,
I think all great points. I would just add, if you're looking to get into the space and you want to connect with, have your brand connect with fans, I think being authentic to who you are as a brand, not trying to be something you're not, doing the research, understanding the insights around the fans that you're trying to reach, and try to get them closer to their passion as much as possible, right? So I think that's iterating, it's working with them to hear what they want, what they don't want, and really just moving the needle forward there. So again, staying on top of the pulse.
Nancy, you're getting some shout outs. Do you want to come join us up here? Well, I think we have time actually for one more, so I'll just throw this one out there. The intersection of sports and technology continues to evolve. What trends do you foresee having the biggest impact on brand engagement over the next 5 years?
I think this is going to be a good question for you. I would just say, what we're seeing is, AI, I think, is probably the word everyone's got on their mind. So we're, looking at the space. We have a team dedicated in that space internally, and I think that's going to allow for what you had talked about earlier was even, further personalization and being able to deliver real-time, relevant in a way that we've never seen before. But and I don't think it's even 5 years. I think we're looking, and you're probably looking on a monthly basis because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go quick, and then I think this certainly Damon and Rich will probably have more on this front. But I think from our standpoint, we've incorporated robotics and different AI-inspired technologies into venues. Like I think this past year in the Dome, we were able to reduce transaction time, for example, from about 1:20 down to 25 seconds by ripping out a lot of traditional concession stands and making them more self-checkout. And I think at the end of the day, you're not necessarily reducing the number of human workforce. Like there's still employees at these stands to help from a customer service standpoint, but it's getting folks back to their seats quicker, and it's leaning into the tech without letting the tech fully take over, right? It's letting it comment the experience as opposed to really fully do it. So I think we're going to lean more into that. But at the end of the day, it still has to feel personal. There still has to be the human touch. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Damon and Allison hit it for our side. It's all about personalization, right? We talked about identifying who your consumers are and how you want to pursue those. In Arena and in Dome, we're thinking about how do we create a personalized experience that can compete with what the consumer has at home. If you think about at home now, your couch is super comfortable, your TV is probably pretty amazing, whatever you have in the fridge is really to your delight, right? Like how do we compete with that? From the sense of, okay, what do you want to eat? What is your path to the Dome? How do we create surprise and delight experiences in Arena that actually appeal to you as the individual and not to the masses? So that's a lot of where we need to focus there. And then when you start thinking about the consumer, like I said before, 99% of fans not necessarily going to come to the Smoothie King Center. How do we think about reimagining that direct-to-consumer experience? What different viewpoints can we offer from our Pelicans Plus offering? What sorts of alt casts really appeal both here locally in New Orleans, but also to our international consumer? So that's really a lot of what we have to push for. And I really agreed. It's not necessarily even a 5-year plan. This is the sort of stuff that we really have to be innovating against in the next year or two. So really top of mind.
One thing I forgot, so my wife went to Tulane, so I love New Orleans. It always cracks me up when I see the Smoothie King Stadium. So I think the main point Allison made, which is AI. I think we also talked about globalization, F1, noted communications. Years ago, I came from Paramount Plus on the streaming side, so now we can get, high-level content anywhere. But it's the personalization, communication, sports brings people together, and I think that's going to be the big thing. Historically, soccer, for example, right? There's Brazil, there's Argentina. My wife's Brazilian. They don't like each other, but they love each other when it comes to soccer. So I think communication is going to be key. And then AI from a creative perspective, from brands. Right now, there's so much UGC. It's nice, but you don't necessarily get to control it. This, I think, you'll be able to control your brand a little bit better in this open world of UGC.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience if anyone has a question.
We left them speechless, Austie.
Yeah, it was all me. All righty, guys. Well, thank you guys for joining me up here. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you guys.